Good morning. My name is Dr. Lori Baudino, and I'm doing collaborative check-ins again this week. And I'm so excited to talk with one of my dearest, most important people in my professional work, and that's Melissa Idelson, and she runs the Child Success Center. And so, Melissa, I am so excited to have you here and talk about Child Success Center. You and I have been collaborating back and forth with families and working together, and just the wealth of knowledge you bring to me and all the people, all the resources that we've become this great team. It's been such a great contribution to my work, and I'm so excited to share with parents how important occupational therapy is, and specifically the work that you're doing. So let me pass it to you. Tell us more about you. What else did I miss?
Thanks, Lori. Definitely, you have been such a valuable support to our family. So it's my pleasure and joy to work collaboratively with you. So I have been an occupational therapist for 30 years now. I graduated out of Perth, Western Australia a long time ago. And I am sensory integration certified and was trained at the original Ayres clinic 25 years ago. And for the last 15 years have been the founder and director of a team of about 20 speech therapists, occupational therapists, educational therapists, physical therapists, and a social skills support therapists at Child Success Center. That's a development and learning center in Santa Monica. And I would say that my passion for going down this direction is to provide a successful, happy, joyful place for children that are struggling with the job of childhood, whether that is crawling and learning how to eat, or communication skills, friendship skills, motor skills, emotional regulation, sensory processing, dyslexia, attention deficit, and academic skills as they get through elementary and middle school. We wanted to have a joyful, fun, playful space and wonderful therapists that are well equipped both within their scope of practice and out of their scope of practice, because we do have to look at children as a whole, which means we often have to go slightly outside our scope of practice and learn new skills, and then learn how to refer families and children successfully to people that can help.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I can't express it enough. I know I tell you every time I talk to you, every practitioner I have collaborated with through the Child Success Center has brought me so much knowledge, and just such a beautiful way of looking at the whole child and supporting the families to understand the children, or even in the school system to understand the child. And it's such a gift. And I love when you're talking about play, that playfulness. And sometimes as providers in the medical fields, even education fields, and then us parents, we can think that play seems so simple, but yet there's so much involved with that. So much about what's happening in the brain and the body that takes place, and that playfulness is where the learning happens, and the relationships happen, and the organization happens. And so I would love to hear more, if you could share with us about that scope of practice of how Child Success Center looks at the child.
Yeah, sure. So I think, being that I am not just a sensory integration trained therapist, but I also have a background in floor time, and I look at how regulated and organized a child's nervous system is to access the world. And what we do when we explain to parents, whether it's a 6-month-old baby, a 2.5-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old that's coming in with learning that's frustrated, or even a 15-year-old where the emotional system has really shut down, that really young adult at that point. The first place we have to look at is accessing the nervous system, but also what we call decoding it. We all have our own individual way that our nervous system is coded. We aren't all equal. What I explain to caregivers, and eventually also to children, because when a child understands themselves and is able to verbalize and let you know what they need, they have some perspective of self. And when you have perspective of self, you can then start to build perspective of other people's thoughts and feelings. And when a lot of children struggle socially, occupational therapy is not necessarily the first place of referral that a preschool or an elementary school or parents or pediatricians would think of. But because occupational therapists understand how the sensory systems work, especially I can vouch for the amazing OTs at Child Success Center that we have a specific training model for OTs when they come in, and we also have therapists that love the type of work we're able to do and stay with the center for a long time, and so we get to dig really deep into that model. But we really look at what type of sensory and therefore sensory motor experiences regulate the child's nervous system, which really typically will end up in a child happier and more playful and more able to engage and more able to reciprocate and more able to take in the outside world and the outside thoughts and feelings of others, which builds flexibility. So, there's some really wonderful programs with tools such as social thinking by Michelle Garcia-Winner. Now, when we go dig deeper underneath that, she understands that the child's nervous system needs to be regulated. So we need to understand how all their sensory systems, and when we do an assessment, the most important place is that we meet a child where they're at. We meet a family where they're at, and it is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it's an unpacking. I always say to parents, we're peeling back the layers of the onion until we get to the core. So no assessment should be done on meeting a child once.
Right. Yes. And when you're talking about that, I know you know this about me, but when I'm looking at the emotional system and the psychological impact of what's happening for a child, there is a parallel process that's happening on the body and in the body. So when you're talking about the nervous system, again, you know this about me. When I see a child, they walk in my office or I see them in their school environment or home, and I'm thinking, have you had that foundational work of occupational therapy? How is that nervous system? And so that they can build that bottom-up foundation to get them through those higher level thinking and skills and be able to enjoy that play.
I love that about you, in that you have such a strong background in movement and understanding movement. And I think what gets to be difficult is some children show some mild signs of dysregulation. They could be a little more difficult to parent. There could be a little bit more conflict come about when a sibling comes on board, a younger sibling or a third, there's 3 kids in the house, or the family moves house or moves city or moves school, or the transition from preschool to kindergarten when all of a sudden children are expected to grow up a little bit more. But it is imperative that we understand movement, because we do a complimentary intake call with every single family, and that could be up to a 20-minute call of starting to unpack what did that child experience from in utero to birth history, to early developmental history, to the early milestones, to temperament and regulation, to eating, to sleep-wake cycles, to bowel bladder control, because all of those things are really important. So looking at a child holistically is imperative. We often see a mirror image between articulation and fine motor skills. Right? So we see what's going on. It's not unusual that children might need handwriting, fine motor skill support, and have oral motor support, or picky eating and articulation, and possibly a history of a tongue tie release done that maybe didn't fully get done and needs to be revised, and they need different services. So I think having a team together, and also not just a team within CSC, but being in collaboration with someone like you, a team outside of CSC, it helps us make sure that we give the child and the family what they need in each step of the process.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about, you were talking about some changes in life, and right now we're dealing with this pandemic and this reopening happening. And I'm wondering if we could explore, what is occupational therapy, specifically with Child Success Center? How can it support parents through the telecommunication therapy right now?
That's a really good point, because I know there's been so much struggle with, we don't want kids on screen time. We also, we have been doing some Zoom sessions, and we also have had families that one session or two sessions and they give up. And what we want to explain to their parents, and it's really hard, I think, with all the stress of what's been going on over the last 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
But a new mode of supporting a child is like a new learning curve. It could take 3 to 5 sessions to get into a groove. The therapists are learning that didn't work. I have to modify that. I have to adapt it. I have to come at it from a different angle. So it's been hard in that way for parents that don't have the capacity right now. It does definitely require that parents are on board in the sessions. Whereas when the children come to Child Success Center, the parents can hand a child over, they can get a little bit of a break, and they get some feedback at the end, but they're not actively always interacting in the session. So we have found that we've been doing a lot of train the trainer. We've been really in real time helping caregivers modify their environment, adapt their environment, add to their environment, understand the parameters of what is going on in the environment that could trigger that child's dysregulation, poor attention, and therefore poor ability to access their skills consistently or their communication skills. What activities are going to prep the nervous system? What activities can you use to gear shift the nervous system into a more regulated state? And what language can you use? So I've done some sessions with a caregiver where they have an earpiece on, and I get to watch what's going on and talk them through when to pause, what to say, what to choose. And they've learned so much, and I never would have thought in a million years that occupational therapy could have been a successful service delivery model through telehealth. And yesterday we got a referral of a family from the East Coast. And it's a 9-year-old with attention deficit. And now I know that we actually can help this family and provide for them a support, whether it takes them all the way through the process or just the beginning. I know that we can help.
I agree with you in that I see so much benefit going into the homes and working where the environment's happening, getting it in that interaction between the actual family and building on that relationship, even more so than the therapist-child relationship. And so what you're doing is really, I mean, what better way? It's in-home support so that any issues that come up, all the dynamics that are just there, you don't have to create them. You don't have to be creative. It's just right in front of you, is able to be accessed and given to them in real time. And then that's the practice. It can be generalized and maintained across the different rooms of their house and across the different people in their house. And talk about all the skills you're working on, the language you've talked about the social learning theory, the regulation, and then the motor skills, the modulation, the regulation piece.
Crazy things I thought I could never do is actually do an assessment over Zoom.
Yeah.
And obviously we wouldn't take the standardized testing, but when you have detective skills and you know the activities that you would do and you can preset them up, there's a lot that you can find out. So I think, as a sensory integration OT, we're very blessed at Child Success Center because we have 2 large sensory motor gym spaces with every piece of equipment under the sun. And we want children to experience lots of vestibular and proprioception, so lots of movement senses, and lots of visual motor senses together. But there's a lot of things that you can do at home. And I think that some of our families, as we unpack this reopening, will choose to stay on Zoom. I think that we are doing some in-yard, like going into people's yards where we still feel the family feels safe and child feels safe and the therapist can social distance with the PPE, and we can start getting some support. And then we're reopening the center with children really still being in individual spaces for now, but hoping that we could have some small groups by July.
Right. That's so wonderful. Well, I really hope that everyone listening really sees this as an opportunity to give the gift to your family and to this children to really understand how important developing this foundation is for children and then ongoing. So when you're thinking about even your older children, really thinking about can we get them this extra support, whether it's one session or many sessions, really thinking about how important the whole nervous system is in terms of play and learning.
One of the things I probably would share is that regulation is about co-regulation. And a lot of our parents that have come into Child Success Center over the last 15 years would always say to the therapists, wow, he does so well or she does so well with you, because it's about co-regulation. And I think that's what has been so beautiful, Laurie, with our relationship together, is that there is only so far our OT, speech, etc., can take parents and children on that co-regulated state. And I think it's been really beautiful. And I want to say thank you for being a place that we can, hand our families over to you that really need to dive a little deeper and need some more nurturing and support in co-regulation, because it makes the world of difference for children in all their skill development, emotional and attentional.
Yes, so that's really understanding your own self so that we can be of support to our own children and have that dance together with our children back and forth.
Yeah.
So how can families find Child Success Center?
You can go to childsuccesscenter.com. We're on Yelp, and our office number is on the website, but it's 310-899-9597. And Marilee is our wonderful office manager, and she will be answering the phone. And I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with anyone that wants to start to understand if these are some things that could help their child and their family.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. I look forward to chatting more.